keys. Can't find them. So I'm sad about that. I hope we didn't get rid of them, but I feel like my mom did a clean out of drawers, and she probably did get rid of those. I mean, they were in the same drawer, in the same spot, since I used them 20 years ago. So, if I do come across them, we will still do that video. But I thought we could talk about what having a cell phone was like in the early 2000s and the silly things that we did with them. It's just funny to think back. I actually got my first cell phone earlier than most kids, and it was only to be used for emergencies and, safety things. So I got my cell phone in 4th grade, which would have been 2001. I don't remember what the brand was, but it was a silver cell phone that was like this big. Okay, like, I'll put my hands here so you can see, like this big, and then it had an antenna that was a permanent, like, thicker antenna that came out of it, and that was it. Like, that was the cell phone, and it was just the numbers. So I would keep that off in my front backpack. And in 6th or 7th grade, I still had that same cell phone, but I started to use it more regularly, and I would keep it on. This is when we were able to start texting. So I had one friend that was able to text, just one, but she was like my best friend. So we texted so much that first month because she got her first cell phone. Then she started texting me. It was the first time I had ever texted anyone. I remember just having the most fun of, like, we were just texting all night. But the bill that we got, my parents were not happy about after that month. They were like, okay, you're doing too much texting. Now we have to pay whatever the overage was. And so back then, you had to pay for both minutes, like the minutes that you talked on the phone, the number of texts. So in your plan, you would get X amount of texts. I don't know if it was like 100, I don't know. And then after that, it would be, I don't really remember, but let's say like 15 or 20 cents per text. I don't think it was over 50 cents per text, but imagine, 2 middle school girls texting all the time. It probably did add up. Then I had to bear down on the texting after that, but that's really when we were getting into instant message, AIM, and MSN chat. Then you could just talk to your friends over the computer. Thankfully that was free in about 7th or 8th grade. I got my first phone that was really like my first cell phone that I was allowed to use for texting, and it was really my cell phone. The other cell phone was more, just that emergency phone, and I kind of started texting on it. But then I got my first cell phone, and it was a Motorola, and it was kind of the chunkier flip phone. My parents had ones that were all silver, and I had one I chose that had a black front, and then the sides were silver. also did have an antenna that you could pull up if you needed to. So it had this little things you could pull up this antenna to help your service, I guess. And on that cell phone, all of my cell phones up until my iPhone did this, but this one especially, when a text was coming in, you could hear it. It would kind of crackle and make this kind of high-pitched noise. It would be really quiet, not like a computer turning on, how that's so loud, but it would just be like all of a sudden you could just hear. I can't even explain what the noise was, but it was almost just like a quiet little crackle or like a little popping sound. So even if you had your phone on silent, you could still kind of hear when a text came in. Just weird. That was my first phone that had a camera, and the camera, of course, was so low quality and so pixely, but it felt like, the newest technology. Having a camera on your cell phone was this big thing. This was a time that you still had only X number of texts that you could send in the plan. So I've somehow found out that if I send a picture with my text, that I would be able to write way more on my text, and it still only counted as one text. So most texts would only be 160 characters. And if you wrote a long book, some cell phones would stop you, so you could only send that amount. But then, otherwise, if you wrote long, if it did allow you to write it all, it would send it as separate texts. So it would be like, if you wrote a long paragraph, you're maybe sending 5 different texts. So that would add up quickly in the amount of texts you're allowed to have. So I found out, sending a picture would send it only as one text, and I could write as much as I wanted. I would always do that and let people know, by the way, I'm sending this, because then it only counts as one text and people kind of knew. Also, when you were texting, you would have D9 and D9. You didn't have a keyboard, you just had your numeric keyboard. And so D9 was a shortcut way to text, almost like autocorrect. So you would write what you want to write, but each number has 3 different letters that it could correlate to. When you're doing D9, it would kind of autocorrect what it thought you were saying, or you would have to click, 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 click to get to the one that you wanted. So let's say you want to say hello. Okay, so imagine you have this numeric keyboard and you see the different letters that are on there. So H is 2 clicks into 4. So you would click 4, 1, 2. That would be your H. Then 3 is 2 clicks for E. So 2 clicks up, click, click, to E. Then 5 is the third one in for L. So you click, 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 wait so that it goes to the next thing. Click, 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 wait till it goes to the next thing. And then 6, you do click, click, click. That would be hello. And I know it sounds, what's hilarious is as I'm explaining this, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like because from that, you would want to shorten as much as possible so you could get as much as possible into one text, and then it just became, the cool thing that you did, and, all the, younger kids were using these abbreviations, and of course you would use them in AIM, and the biggest one in AIM, Instant Messenger, was BRB, be right back, because, you'd always have to, quickly go do something for your mom or whatever, so you'd stop your messaging with BRB. Then a funny one that I have no idea, why did this become a thing? I don't know, but, TTYL, talk to you later, was big, but also, at least in my school, people, they would say TTFN, ta-ta, for now. No one is saying ta-ta for now. How did that even become a thing? I have no idea. But TTFN was also something people would say. I didn't really use it because I thought, I'm not even saying that in real life, so I don't get it. Now, my next cell phone was a Samsung, and this was around the time that razors were really big, and I loved the razors, of course, and I really wanted a hot pink one, but I got one that was very similar to a razor, but actually better, in my opinion. I really liked it. It was black Samsung, and it was flat like a razor, but instead of just opening like this, I could also close it and open it like this, and it had a full keyboard. So I could open it like this, and then it had the numbers. I don't really remember how the layout was, but it did have a full keyboard, and it was one of the first that did have one like that. And on the front, it had a touch screen, just a couple of buttons basically that you could touch that would play music. And I remember getting that. My parents went to a kiosk at the mall and got me this cell phone. I mean, I think they upgraded their cell phones too, but I remember being so excited in the backseat driving home and looking at my cell phone and just feeling so excited. But yeah, I specifically remember we were at a kiosk at the mall. That phone I absolutely loved. That one had the best swinging it shot too. One thing with the this one time in history class, all of a sudden, there's this music playing, and I suddenly realize it's my phone in my back pocket. It must have like the touch screen, must have like butt dialed the touch screen thing. So it started playing this Prince song, and I'm like, oh my gosh, back then they were so strict about cell phones, and you weren't, you were supposed to keep them in your lockers. So yeah, I just remember being like embarrassed and then thinking I was going to get in trouble. But everyone did keep their cell phones around, especially in high school, because you would still text. And actually, D9 was easier to text under your desk than I'm sure an iPhone is today, because you could have your phone under your desk, and we had the numbers so memorized that you could just do it without looking at all, and you could feel the buttons too, so you could feel like, okay, I said whatever I was going to say, and then send. So you could text, your friends or whatever. In high school is when I really started to talk on the phone more, and actually talk on my cell phone instead of just texting. Yes, we were talking on the cell phones, but you only had a certain amount of minutes per month. But here was the thing. After 9 p.m., you had unlimited minutes. So after 9 p.m. is when you would make all of your phone calls to your friends and sit and talk. The person I remember talking to the most was this guy, Shane, who, if you watched my awkward prom stories, he was my best prom date in senior year. We were really good friends. So I can remember being like, okay, it's 9 o'clock, texting him and saying, let's call. And we would call, and we would just sit and chat for hours. I didn't want my parents to hear what I was saying, so I would sit in this corner of my room, and I would put like blankets and stuff under the door so that, like soundproofing my room. And yeah, it was always top secret about whatever very important things I was discussing. In high school, my best friend had a sidekick, and that was, it looked kind of like a Game Boy in a way. It's like this, and you would click it with your thumb, and the screen would go up, and then you'd have a full keyboard. I remember that being so loud and kind of annoying. The sound of the constant like click of the screen going up and then and she was texting all the time. She had this boyfriend in high school that she just like was always talking to. It was the only friend that I knew that had a sidekick, and it fit her perfectly. Then, right before I went to college, I got a new cell phone, and this one, I want to say it was Nokia, but it had the front where it had the screen, and then the numeric keyboard, and like a little, I don't know, like a little clicky button. But then, instead of my other one where it like did this, the entire thing flipped up, and then there was like a big screen and a full keyboard under it, and I really liked that phone too. My college roommate did not. She, at one point, she was super sweet, and we were